Thursday, Friday, and Saturday probably can't get here quick enough as we go through this process. Like to thank a lot of people, but I went through and asked Kelly Klein, my college coordinator, how many people actually have their hands on this process in our building. And we counted over 90 people that contribute some way, shape, or form to this whole process. So there's a lot of great people that put a lot of time and energy, but the main people are the college scouts, the pro scouts, George Payton, our director, Jamal Stevenson, Brian Munnins, our pro director, and Coach Zimmer and the coaching staff. Just put in unbelievable amounts of time, not only here in these meetings, but out on the road, doing all the film evaluations, and feel very confident where we're at right now with our draft board. We're doing some more things this afternoon and doing some tweaks here and there through tomorrow. And then Thursday, we're excited and to get ready to roll. So with that, I'll go ahead and open it up with questions.
Rick, how deep is this offensive line class in your estimation?
I think there's a lot of deep positions in this class. I think when we looked at our front board, this is the most number of players we have that we think are draftable. I don't think every team has, 234 draft picks that say 234 players are draftable. But I know from our board this year and the way it's developed, the depth of talent, especially on the offense and defensive lines, are one of the probably strongest I've seen in a while. So I know on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and those 2 picks Friday as of today, that you should be able to land some players that can come in and make an impact on your roster.
Rick, with all the big contracts that you've signed in recent years, how much more importance does that place on either additional draft picks or really being good in the later rounds?
We've always put a point of emphasis on that, and I know with how top-heavy our roster is right now with the contracts we have out there, these players that we're bringing in have to come in and contribute. And, you know, all these players that do have these big contracts were basically brought in, developed, and then received it. So I think the process we have in place and us working hand in hand with the coaches, which I think is vital. In fact, the coaches were back in again. We're bringing them in position by position, and the coordinators going through everything one more time because of the importance of the draft classes that are coming in being able to contribute. And this coaching staff does a phenomenal job of developing these guys, because that's going to be the guys, if we do get anyone hurt, those are the guys that are going to line up and play for you.
Since Coach Kubiak came in, does that change the draft strategy at all because he likes a certain type of offensive player? Or?
I think it's Kevin Stefanski, but I know with what he's changed and the influence of Gary Kubiak and the style of offense we're going to run, along with Rico Dennison at the offensive line position, there are traits that we're looking for. So as we talk about each one of these players, some players are going to be very good players, but they may not be very good players in what we're going to require them to do from a schematic standpoint. So everybody talks about the zone scheme versus this gap scheme, and just to clarify, gap guys are more road graders moving forward, double teams. Zone scheme guys are going to be more athletic, being able to work at the second level, out to the linebackers, being able to do outside zone, have to run laterally. So there's a point of emphasis on specific traits we're looking for to run what they're going to run offense. And when you can get on the same page with the coaches, where we recognize this guy is a good player, but he may be a really good starter in this scheme, but he may not be a really good starter in another scheme. So you have to marry that up, and that's why it's so important for us on the personnel side to understand what the requirements are for these players at their position. And that's just from the football side. Now, all the other things that we look for have to check the boxes as well.
To follow up what you said a minute ago in terms of you guys being up against the salary cap and wanting guys to contribute immediately, is there maybe more of an emphasis to get guys that can play right away versus taking some more developmental players?
I don't want to call it more of an emphasis. I hope that we've always put a high emphasis on the draft, and we want to draft the players. You know, we understand if we can fill with the way, you know, the draft board has developed, if there's a player that we have a lot of depth at and a player that we don't have a lot of depth at, that now we can go ahead and fill a need. But that need, that player to fill that need has to be the same value of where he is developed on the draft board. We'll never, ever take a player developed lower just to fill a need, because that's when you truly make mistakes.
Rick, you probably don't share the local angst over the condition of the offensive line. Do you understand it?
Angst, everybody has angst. My wife, I'll leave that at home. She said if I draft another corner though, don't come home. You can just stay at the office, although there's some pretty good corners we like in the first round. But no, I understand where everything is, but I also understand that if we have a guy that we think is a Pro Bowl talent, and for some reason that guy falls to us at 18, how do you not take that player? And plus, you have to balance out the depth at each position too. So if there's a unique situation where a Pro Bowl caliber player falls to you at 18 and you're taking a lesser talent player, I think you're going to make a mistake. But I also believe that with the depth at certain positions, when it goes into this Friday draft, you're also going to get some pretty significant players. We always look at, as we make the decisions too, is, okay, you have player at this position and player at this position, and all of a sudden, the player, which one are you going to take? Well, we can say, we're going to take this one because underneath him, there's a huge drop-off. So if we don't take him right here, okay, we're not going to get a need filled with a good player. If there's 4 or 5 more players underneath that we do like, that's when the potential is just take the, you know, one of those guys that fall to you. It could be, let's trade back in the draft to accumulate more draft picks, because we're still going to get the same value of player as long as we have those 4 or 5 names there. So you also got to really pay attention to where the run of the positions go in the draft. And a lot of times, you know, 2 years ago, we had to move up to get a Pat Elflein, for example, you know, because there was a run right in there, and he was one of the few players left that we liked. Last year, you know, the run on the offensive lineman went earlier than where we picked. So you have to weigh all that out, and then you have to be able to react once you see how that board is coming off and where the runs are on positions.
You brought up how many guys you have graded as draftable. Does that make it more willing to trade back and pick up more picks?
Depends on the position. You know, there's some really good depth at certain positions, but we may not need depth there. But you kind of go in with the mindset of, let's not worry about, let's just go get the best players in this draft. And it'll sort itself out once we get into the OTAs and once we get into training camp. Because if you don't, and then all of a sudden you have a rash of injuries, then you're maybe kicking yourself, why didn't I take that player? So you always kind of go into a draft, I think, really truly honing in on, let's just get the best guys that we possibly can and get them in here and hopefully fill in needs at the same time.
Hey Rick, how has the NFL draft smoke screens evolved over the years in today's media?
I don't think there's any smoke screens out there. Everything I read you guys write is really true.
Do you believe anything that's out there, or is it harder to believe things now than maybe?
It's entertaining to read, to be honest with you. But to be honest, also is, I don't know what other teams are thinking right now. Teams don't know what we're thinking. Teams can be putting stuff out there that may not be true, but they want it out there. So all we're doing is just honing in what we believe, what our draft board is, how we have that draft board developed, and how we're gonna attack this draft. You know, there's a lot of stuff going around this time of year out there. But we're kind of block that all out and just hone in on what you need to do to help your franchise.
Do teams ever use the top 30 visits to throw the scent off, like invite a guy that you have no interest in, just to put it out there, especially if there's been a report that you're linked to that guy?
I don't know how other teams do that or not. You know, I won't share if we do that or not. There's a lot of games that go on this time of year, so try to be very efficient at what we do.
And do you watch the other other general managers, their pre-draft press conferences? And is there anything that they say that's useful to you?
No, we're usually locked in draft meetings while everybody else is up at the podium like I am today. So, you know, there's always the clippings and things, and again, you take it with a grain of salt on what's being said and what other GMs are saying. But, you know, you don't know until you actually, the clock goes off and you get in the game, then you actually can get a sense and feel for what's really true and not true.
As you look to create some cap space to be able to sign this draft class, might trading a current player be an option that, you know, you look at in these coming days?
I don't know, you know, no one has really approached us on any of our players to say, if they do, it'd have to be of value to get rid of a player, because I think we do have a pretty good roster. I know, you know, hopefully this is the last chance of this whole process to make a significant improvement to your roster during the draft, but I can't predict anything. I have no idea. I mean, I can say no right now, and then I can go and get a phone call an hour later. So, but as of right now, I don't anticipate anything.
You
Rick,
consider,
what-
For two more for Rick.
do you consider it a big deal having to clear this cap space to sign all your draft picks, or do you have a lot of potential options?
No, once Rob gets out of cap jail, he'll come in and figure it out. No, we got a plan. Like I said, we, you know, have planned this process all the way out. This is not something that we're just shooting at the hip. There's a method and there's a plan in place from a budgetary standpoint of what we need to do and how we need to get there.
Rick, what do you know about Cousins that you might not have known when you signed him a year ago? What's your, after a year later?
Oh, I think Kirk, you know, just being around him for the year, I've never seen a guy work at it as hard as he does. I mean, he was the first one in the building when they were allowed back in the building. He is nonstop all afternoon into that film room. I know the time and energy he puts in to be successful and to guide this franchise. I know, especially with Gary Kubiak coming in and Kevin Stefanski taking over the offense now, really honing in on what Kirk Cousins does best as a quarterback, what we can do to help him as well. But there's no one as professional as Kirk Cousins is in the way he approaches this job and how important it is to him.
Okay, can I ask a quick Mike Hughes question, just because his agency tweeted out a picture of him running? How's his health now and recovering from the ACL?
But he's running.
Okay, but I mean.
Yeah,
ahead of
it's a
schedule?
process, yeah. In fact, he's a little ahead of schedule right now, so we got a long way to go. But I know he's been here all off-season, working extremely hard at it. I know he's anxious to get back on that field, and I know Eric Sugarman and our medical staff and the success they've had with ACLs and knee injuries and how quickly they get those guys back on the field and playing at the same level or higher. So, you know, as he makes progress, but we're excited about where he's at this point in his rehab right now.